Hey, buddy.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Can you explain the T-shirt for me?
Yeah, I've always referred to for years my family as a circus.
Okay.
My siblings are clowns. And when the band was on the road, we referred to it as the circus because you traveled from town to town and you basically packed up everything, went somewhere, unpacked it, did your show, packed it again, and it was just a great metaphor for the circus.
So what I'm seeing here, it's not a shirt, it's memorabilia.
It's a stand-in for my full uniform.
Okay, your full uniform. Well, let's kick things off before we lose people. Introduce yourself. Who are you, and what and how would you describe yourself?
My name is Dudley-Brian Smith. I'm a member of the folk trio Smithfield Fair, now beginning our 53rd year. We're based here in Baton Rouge. We don't get to play here that often, but we enjoy it when we do. I'm also a writer, author, poet, chief cook and bottle washer. I'm ex-Navy. I've done a little bit of everything over the years.
So I met you many years ago. You would come on a show that we used to produce, and you would perform as Smithfield Fair. So I knew you as Smithfield Fair and always have. You and your beautiful wife, Jan. Who else is in the band?
And my younger brother, Bob.
Okay, so Bob, Jan.
There were two younger brothers in the band. One has left the band. He just decided he'd had enough.
Okay. So it has been a pleasure knowing you for as long as we have, and your beautiful wife. You're just the nicest people in the world, and super talented too. Last year we did a project together. In my eagerness to produce television show content, we were making episodes of a show called Plucked, which, by the way, I need to let you know that we're going to be publishing all of that stuff over the next 2 weeks on our YouTube channel.
I shared that on Facebook, and a lot of people said, "When can we watch this?"
I think, that's good news. I think that it was widely and well received because you were in it. It's true. But we're going to release those because remember when we first started, I said, look, either this is going to be sold to Netflix or an HBO Max, or we're going to publish it on our social media channel and then give you all the media. And so you have clips and stuff as well. Well, I'm at the point now where we're going to take that show and give it a home, and then we're moving on to other projects and things for various reasons, which I won't get into at this point. But it's been a very interesting year of learning for me. And we are going to be doing that. So look forward in the next couple of weeks to seeing your full episode released on the Movie Media YouTube channel. I'm looking forward to that. It's beautiful.
And it's all Louisiana artists, right?
Yes, that was not the initial. We were about show 3 before we realized that actually these are all Louisiana musicians. And of course they are, because we're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, doing a show about musicians, and we are not in short supply in this area.
Oh, no.
So I have to ask, the obvious, the elephant in the room is that you have an accent. Dare I say it's even stranger than my accent, at least by my ear. So where's your accent from?
Mine is. I'm one of those people that I have my father used to call a melodious ear.
Melodious
ear. We're of Scots-American stock. That figures into it. We're also fairly well-educated people, and we've traveled broadly. I've lived in several different places across the United States. When I moved back to Louisiana from Florida several decades ago, people thought I was from up north because everyone that was in the band at that time was from Massachusetts or Connecticut or areas like that. And that will do a mind.
I'm laughing because I'm from the United Kingdom. At least I was born there. I was born in Cambridge, England. And I say Cambridge, England because it's so much more.
Sounds better than
no one knows. I was born out 45 minutes outside of Cambridge, but in a place no one's going to know. So like that area, Cambridge. And I'm very familiar with Scotland, and I appreciate you just pointing out that you are well-traveled and highly educated. So you're Scottish, but you were also those things.
Right.
Yeah.
I also studied for a time. I studied the German language. I also studied the Scots Gaelic language.
Really?
And it did a bit of teaching, kind of student teaching. I really love languages. I'm rubbish at them. And I only remember little bits and pieces of things after a while. It's one of those, it's the sad thing. People talk about the Cajuns here. they have used their language and are still using their language, therefore it's accessible. But if you're in Louisiana or traveling around North America and you are studying and attempting to be fluent in Scots Gaelic, so when you go back to Scotland, you speak to the Highlanders in their own language, it's a near impossibility because you just don't retain it, you don't use it, and it's like a muscle. You just really don't keep it.
So I signed up
Fresh.
for Duolingo maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, and I did like 522 consecutive days of Spanish on Duolingo.
Yeah.
And I got to the point where I could go to Home Depot and I could identify that they wanted this person was looking for green paint, for
Right.
example. And but I just couldn't speak it, so I was like, "This is stupid." And a friend of mine said the only way to learn a language is to immerse yourself in it. So, how often do you get to go over to Scotland?
We used to go fairly regularly every couple of years, but the airlines got more expensive.
Indeed.
Our daughter continued to grow, and so the last trip that anybody in our family over, we sent her over on her own.
How old was she?
She just graduated from college at
Okay.
that point. She's one of those people that makes friends wherever she goes. We adopted. In a loose sense, a young Scottish student when he was here. He's an engineering student, and when he was here, and what we tried to do was to make his time here as enjoyable as possible. And it became, he stayed at the house lots of time. He had a dormitory room. We fed him, we took him places, and being involved in the local Scottish society, we took him hither and yon with that sort of thing. And so it did make his time here easier. So when Margaret went back to Scotland the next trip, she spent time with his family.
Okay.
And with him and a number of other international students here.
It does make international travel so much easier when your accommodations are taken care of, especially when it's someone you know.
They went to France, and the young man that sort of led them.
And how old were they when this happened?
Oh, they were finished with college this last trip.
Young adults.
So what, 20?
Did they fall in love?
27? Oh, no.
Okay.
They were all good friends to begin with, and when they got over there, Romain, his family owns a vineyard outside of Paris. So they went to the vineyard. They stayed over there. They kayaked down one of the rivers. They went to, places that make cheese, dairies that make cheese, and but they also went to the Louvre and to other places.
So can I have his number?
I'll get it from Margaret for you.
Thank you, please do. Yeah, my wife and I went to Paris a couple of years back, and as an Englishman, we are not particularly, how do we put this? We don't look at the French fondly, shall we say?
Yes, I know.
And I grew up in the and so anyway, so I didn't want to go to Paris when my wife was like, "Let's go to Paris." I'm like, ugh. We went to Paris, and oh, how the impression of Paris changes when you go with someone that you love.
Yeah.
Woohoo! So next time I go to Paris, which we will go to Paris, I need that guy's number and the vineyard and the whole hookup.
Romain did not want to go to Paris to do the touristy things.
No doubt.
But Margaret said, this is the first time I've been to Paris. So she and her roommate, Emily, and several of the other kids, one was from, I think, Germany and one was from Turkey. They said, this may be our only chance to go and see those quintessential things that you consider touristy. So they actually went to Paris. He was very nonplussed by everything, but Margaret was absolutely a sponge. She so enjoyed things. She said, these are paintings that I have looked at my entire life. I come from a big artistic family who loves classical literature and art. And so Margaret was, our daughter was subject to all of that love and all of those appearances. So she went to the Louvre and she really, really enjoyed herself. It's like going to London for the first time. You have to go to the Tate. You have to go to the National Portrait Gallery. You have to go to Piccadilly Circus.
No doubt. My wife, we went to Paris. This is a funny story, and it illustrates how it's just with someone you love is happy, whatever it takes, right? So we go to Paris.
It's infectious.
And she is obsessed with croissants. And so she embarks on the journey to the best croissant. Like, she was obsessed. For the first 2 days we were there, she'd be knocking on restaurant doors at 9 o'clock in the morning, and they don't open at that time. But she assumed that the best croissants would be in one of the best restaurants.
Right.
So that's where she was looking. And I'm like, no, baby.
Not the case.
The hotel we're in, the breakfast downstairs, like, it ain't a Holiday Inn here, you know. The best croissant is normal here. It's normal. So she found it, and they served cheese down in the breakfast thing. It was delicious, and she was very happy. So.
The first time we went to Scotland, we, of course, were on a bent to find the best fish and chips.
Oh.
And what we learned after that particular trip was that the best fish and chips are in the most unexpected places.
Indeed. So, sidebar. One of my clients is the US catfish industry. And so I have spent a couple of years now going to catfish restaurants all across the United States. And I've learned a lot, and I've eaten a lot of catfish. And in the back of my head, I have been looking, because catfish is as near to fried fish, like fish and chips, as you're going to get.
Haddocks as you get. Yeah.
There is a catfish restaurant. Again, you'd never know it to look at it. It's a square box place near a plant in Huntsville, Alabama. It's been there for like 60 years. If ever you're in the Huntsville area, just look up catfish restaurants. They use the beer batter that makes the so it's not quite English fish and chips, but if you're into that type of thing, if you're in Huntsville, Alabama, look that place up. It's legit, and it tastes almost like fish and chips.
That's terrific.
So what do you miss? Do you miss? How long have you been in America for? You married your wife?
No, I was born and raised in Louisiana.
You're born and raised in Louisiana?
I'm from Alexandria. And when I tell people I'm from Alexandria, they go, "Oh, you mean outside of Glasgow?" And I go, "No, Central Louisiana." And Jan is from Baton Rouge. We met at, I think this is perfectly poetic, we met at the rehearsal for a recording session.
Okay.
I had come back from Nashville. A friend of mine had been hired for the session.
So you've always been into music. You've always played.
My father was a professional musician when he was younger, and then he was a church musician when he was older. My mother was a radio standard singer.
Okay, so you were young, and you were just back from Nashville, which means you were aspiring into a music career. About how old were you?
28, 29.
Okay, so you were at your physical peak specimen level, and then you were just coming back from Nashville, and you bumped into Jan.
I went to a session. Actually, the rehearsal the night before the session.
Yes.
And it was a disaster in the making. We could tell that the guy that was running it had no clue what he was doing. Mm. And when we got to the studio, ultimately got to the studio the next night, we realized that the people that ran the studio had no idea and were completely unprepared for what he thought he was going to do. Mm. And it was indeed a first-class, licensed and bonded disaster. Titanic, epic type size. But
it wasn't a complete waste of time. It wasn't a complete
waste of time because Jan was one of the background singers for it. And I really wasn't going to go back. And my piano-playing friend called me and said, I'll pick you up for the session. I said, I'm not really. I think I'm going to be a no-show on that. I mean, that's a disaster. And he said, yeah. He said, the only reason I'm going back is that Didon girl. She's awful pretty. And I went, so somebody's making time where I should be making time? And so that convinced me to go back. And I went back, and we ended up sitting next to each other during the session. And when we got done, I said, would you care to go to Denny's for a Dr. Pepper?
You smooth, sly old dog, you.
And being a non-drinker, that worked for both of us. And so we went and we talked long into the night. Yep. We swapped songs, and as the rest is history.
So when we were filming with you last year, you were gracious enough to open up your house, and we spent some time filming you and Jan singing together. And but the two of you, it's a beautiful thing to watch. So I guess
thank you.
Let's start with, how would you describe your music, the Smithfield Fair vibe?
I've always considered, we grew up on an amalgam. Let me qualify that by saying that Alexandria is considered the crossroads of Louisiana. And when my father was a swing musician, they would get players from the Guy Lombardo's, what do they call, the Royal Guardsmen or whatever they were. They would be on a tour somewhere, and when the tour was over, it's not like it is now. They just cut everybody loose wherever they were.
Okay.
And they had to make their own way back to New York or Philadelphia, wherever they actually lived in. So a lot of them would end up coming through to Alexandria to go to New Orleans or to get on, the bus to wherever. And so Dad got to play with a great deal of really great people. He played
just passing through.
Yeah, several different orchestras that he was in up there, swing bands. And I have a friend, Steve Kahn, who is a well-known singer-songwriter, pianist. He plays with Sonny Landreth a lot, and he's very well-known in this area. Steve's dad, Peanut, was a swing fiddler.
I hope that was a nickname.
Yeah, it was. It was. But my mind, 71-year-old mind being what it is, details sometimes drop out. So
How old are you?
71.
71.
Yeah.
Carry on.
They.
And well done by them.
Yeah, thanks. I'm still standing.
Yeah.
The funny thing about that area is that like it is in other big music centers, which Alexandria is not that big. It was only about 25,000 people when I grew up there. The interesting thing about it from the musical standpoint is that everybody pretty well knew everybody else.
Okay.
And so, they would say, well, we need a fiddler for this. They'd call Peanut Khan, or they need a bass player and my dad would get a call and say, Steve, can you play 3 nights at the, this club or that sort of thing. So we grew up in that environment. Both of my grandmothers were music teachers, voice and instrument teachers. When you grow up in an environment like that, especially I have older siblings that are 7 and 8 years my senior. Mm-hmm. And they brought their music, what they were into. My older brother was in theater.
So ultimate melting pot.
Yeah, he would bring, the music to Oklahoma. I grew up knowing all the words to the musical Oklahoma and Guys and Dolls because my brother had the records and he would be studying those things to do what his parts were. My older sister was a very popular girl that went to all the dances and that sort of thing. So they brought in music, and the folk boom happened. And when the folk boom happened, it also hit television. And that cannot be diminished in its importance because suddenly people all over the country heard the Kingston Trio live and Pete Seeger and the Seekers and people like that, Chad and Jeremy. And that added into the mix. For a lot of kids, it was the Beatles, nothing but the Beatles from 65, 66 on. I missed all that, because I was immersed in other things. So I always say that our music is a very folk-based or roots-based music, because Alexandria being a crossroads, you got the Cajun music right below us in Avoyelles Parish and Evangeline Parish. You've got big band music coming in and out. You've got rock and roll. Swamp pop was very big during my childhood up there. There were big 8, 10, 9-piece bands with horns playing swamp pop. So you got all of that music, and the circus came through. And
then you left with it in your shirt.
In some ways, I really did. The Windjammer orchestras or bands for the circuses were very qualified, capable musicians. And so my mother made sure that we went to every musical opportunity. We were poor Scots people.
So was it like a train line or something that ran through Alexandria?
I think so. It had to be. This is an odd story, but it sort of jumps ahead a little bit. When we were, before we were Smithfield Fair, we went by the name of Charmer.
Okay.
And we were centered in Alexandria, but we traveled all around. And one of the things that we did was we started releasing records. And you had in Ville Platte, you had Floyd Swallow, the famous legendary Floyd Swallow, and his studio with a legendary producer, Joe A. Vance. Mm-hmm. And he had a record press, a record plant. You go there and they put the little vinyl kissies on there and make a record.
Sure.
And it was fascinating and fabulous, but it starts you off very early making records. Mm. Well, some of the records that we made that would be released in the late 70s, early 80s, at the same time, Alexandria was also an Air Force town.
Okay.
We had England Air Force Base there, and
Lucky you.
people were coming through en masse, and our audiences, we played regularly. We played 4 to 6 nights a week.
Cool.
And the audience that came in there always included a lot of, as they were referred to in those days, wingnuts. They would buy our records and take them wherever they went.
Mm-hmm.
Now, about 2-3 years ago, I got called by a company in Los Angeles called Forager Sounds. And what they do is they put out compilations of obscure music. And they found a 1982 album of ours in Los Angeles. And the guy fell in love with it. So they released a song off of that on one of their compilations. A guy in Denmark, Copenhagen, found that same album in some cutout bin in Denmark. And he fell in love with that album. He wanted to buy vinyl. And so we sold him cases of vinyl. Then a guy calls from Finland and says, I've fallen in love with these 2 albums. Can I still get some of this music? Could I do an interview? Sure. Then a guy calls from Slovakia, says, I own a chain of stores from all the way through Europe to Japan.
This is recently.
Yeah, he bought everything we had left in the warehouse.
So what you're telling me is that I'm sitting in the presence of arguably the most famous man that nobody knows.
I doubt that real seriously. But the thing is, it's really interesting about it. Then London called and said BBE Records wants to release, and it all hinged on one song called "It's Never Too Late." And people just said they fell in love with this song. It's 40-something years old.
Wow.
And so the idea is that not only did Alexandria get all these things passing through it and all of this kind of music, but it also sent music out. And I have friends that they're all over the globe, but they're from Alexandria.
That's great.
One of the big bands in the 80s from Alexandria went to Los Angeles with their contract, signed with Capitol Records. Their music, the Romeos, when they did the prequel to Sex and the City, they wanted some 80s music that they didn't have to pay huge licensing fees on. So they called my friend Jerry Honigman and said, what you got? And he licensed 16 songs to them. So it's uncanny, but those were seeds. The diaspora of Alexandria is just amazing.
So I'm an outsider, or have been an outsider in Louisiana my whole life here, but it's kind of cool to have that perspective because I know what Europe's like. I'm like intimately and personally, and how the culture works there, and so I see the differences. And people that live here, I mean, they're very proud people. Louisiana has a lot of very proud people, as they should be. I said, but it's not until like you have those sort of experiences do you realize how far and wide Louisiana and Louisianians reach. Yeah. There's a joke. I was doing a job with a hospital up in Monroe, and they have an airport in Monroe.
Monroe,
because I was like, Monroe. So I was talking to these doctors, and these doctors like live in other parts of the country, but then they fly in for their shifts.
Doctors Without Borders, yeah,
no doubt. But then the reverse of that is the joke is in Monroe is that you can never go to a ski slope anywhere in the world and not meet someone from Monroe. And I've noticed as I've been traveling around, it's true. Like, and Alexandria seems to have that same, I guess, legacy at least.
It does. I've talked to people all over the globe that say, "You're familiar. Where are you from?" "Well, I'm from a little town you won't know, Alexandria, Louisiana." "Oh, I'm from Alexandria." I have, I don't have it anymore. I had a picture. A friend of mine took his sailing boat and sailed down to the Caribbean. And for some reason, he was in a market and he had his band Charmer t-shirt on. And he looks down the row, this open air market, and there's a guy with the same shirt on down there.
That's so funny.
And the guy was stationed somewhere near there, but he had been at England Air Force Base. I have stories, I could tell you stories until tomorrow of people that I've run into or that have, they get somewhere else and they say, Alexandria, and it opens up. I went to when I was living in Nashville, I was sitting at the bar. And I drop names, but it doesn't matter anymore. I was sitting there with several other people, and there was a very beautiful woman tending bar. And so she we were waiting to go to the restaurant there, and it was a famous place at the time called the Close Quarters. I lived upstairs with some of these other songwriters. And she turns around and she looks at me. She's doing one of those bartender things, polishing a glass, and she says, "There is something about you that is so familiar. Where are you from, honey?" And I said, "Well, you've probably never heard of it, but I'm from Alexandria, Louisiana." She drops the glass and she looks at me and she says, "Are you a Smith?" And I said, "Yeah." She says, "I'm a Roark. Our mothers are best friends."
Wow.
And I said, "You're Margie." And she said, "Yeah, I'm Margie."
So internationally, there's 6 degrees of separation. You're never more than 6 people away from anyone you want to meet.
That's right.
And in Louisiana, it's 1 or 2. If you're a Boudreaux, it's 0 because you're related to them.
That's right.
So, yeah, no doubt. So the reason I want to, I'm gonna play some of your music randomly throughout this because I really want people to listen to. It's a beautiful sound that you have.
Thank you.
What I'm interested in is you and your wife. Like you said you met in a recording session.
Yes.
But you to this day sing together and you play together, and I think that's part of your communication. Like
It is.
Yeah, no doubt. How did your sound change because of your relationship with your wife?
It did. Ultimately, it can't stay the same, but Bob and I were continuing on, not really sure what we were going to do as Charmer. And our brother Joel had left to move to Germany. And he's a military historian, so he was traveling all around, following my father's footsteps from D-Day till he came back to the States. I guess after VE Day. But Dad had been at Essex.
Why?
Training for D-Day. And so my brother started at Essex, and he moved all the way through. He was part of the liberation of France, Paris, and all of that. So he came through. So my brother was over there studying that. But it left an empty stool in the band. And so Jan wanted to cut an album. She had songs. I had songs. They were very compatible. We liked singing together a lot. And Bobby would sit in with us and play with us. And so we went into a little studio in Evergreen and we started recording an album. And it ended up being the 3 of us, even though the album was titled, Jan, Didon, Dudley-Brian. And Bob was just a sideman on it. But afterwards he said, I don't mind not being, but he said, people keep calling us the new Charmer when we go out and play. And I said, well, that's an interesting idea, but do you think it's fair to go on as Charmer without Joel? So we checked, and finally we just said, heck with it all. We're the new Charmer. And so it was the 3 of us. What it did was it moved us from strict what are called blood harmonies of the 3 brothers. That's like the Bee Gees. There's a sound there when families sing together. The Cowsills, that's another one. The Osmond brothers, people like that. We went from that to suddenly having not only another voice, but a female voice, but one that just really seemed to fit. And there was no effort in order to make it fit. The music just locked in immediately. And the sound did shift a little bit because now you have a different, strata of voices in there. But the sound is pretty much the same, and I go back now. In fact, the new album we just worked on is a revisitation of old songs from that period of time.
Okay.
And it's interesting to listen to the songs played now because we still remembered them from the old days. We didn't change the arrangements on some of them. We just did them like we were now. But having Jan in the mix does something. It's very exciting. She can nail you to the back wall. Her voice is so powerful at times. And it's very, very interesting to have. We go places and, we played these festivals for years. We played this little concert house. And there, we're not known as Smithfield Fair. They said that's Jan Smith's band.
That's Jan and the Boys.
Jan and the Boys.
Yeah, no doubt I can certainly see that happening. She's extremely, extremely talented.
She is. She writes absolutely beautiful songs, Flowers in Her Hair, God Never Sleeps, things of that nature. And
I love Flowers in Her Hair.
Me too. And I never tire of playing it. You know, somebody asked, I think it was Kenny Rogers one time, did he ever get tired of playing Lucille? And he said, no. He said, because there's somebody in that audience that's never heard it before, that paid good money to travel, to be there, to hear that song. He said, and I take that with great pride and as a great responsibility. Same thing with Jan. I just love it, though. I just, you know, I never get tired of singing her songs, or we do some different things with you know, my songs that we would have done otherwise. It's all very exciting still to this very day.
Do you know who is it? Jacob Collier, the British guy. Have you heard of him?
I know who you're talking about, but it's Collier is right.
Collier, yeah, Jacob Collier.
The guy that does the voice thing.
Yeah, he does the orchestrates the people in the audience. Have you seen that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard him play?
He's phenomenal.
Yeah, like I'm not a musician, but I mean, who doesn't love live music, right? There's a resonance, there's an energy to that sound, whatever that sound is when a musician plays. It just strikes me like the character of Jan's voice and the interplay between your instruments has the same quality as the kind of inspired sounds that he generates. And I'm not sure if it's, you know, necessarily, it is a uniqueness. There's a uniqueness about each musician, I think.
His approach is very unique.
Yeah, and I think that his uniqueness is probably more technical because, you know, I think he's been immersed in it for so long. But
he does master classes for places like Berkeley and Juilliard.
Oh, really?
I mean, he's recognized as being a phenomena. He has a beautiful voice.
Yes, he does.
And his own music that he puts together with his voices is phenomenal. But I think the thing that is so remarkable about him, that's most extreme, is what he does with an audience. He gets people in that audience who may or may not be able to sing to sing.
Have you seen the one where he improvs with the orchestra? It's so good. I mean, it's like it's right on the line of, is this going to work? Isn't this going to work? And it's fantastic. What kind of music do you listen to as a musician? As an accomplished musician of many decades, what kind of music do you listen to?
I really don't listen to much new music anymore. I was surprised. I saw.
If it's not your music, you don't care.
Well, no, not
I
really.
would be a snob like that.
I listen to a lot of Bruce Cockburn.
Don't know him.
He's a Canadian artist. He's a phenomenon.
I know Shania Twain. She's Canadian, isn't she?
I think she is. Yeah. These are people that somehow have remained outside of the general popular spotlight. I listened to, back during the 70s, a lot of a guy named Jimmy Spheris, who was not only a poet, but had a beautiful low voice. And Richie Havens is one of my favorites.
Do you have iTunes on your phone?
No, I don't.
Do you have a phone?
I have a flip phone.
You have a flip phone?
Yeah. I don't carry it, obviously.
So who was it that invented this? Steve Jobs, yes?
And Steve,
my friend just texted me a bit. I cannot share that. So Steve Jobs, when he created
Steve Wozniak.
Well, they created Apple. Steve Jobs created the iPod before the iPhone. Yeah. Anyway, he said that you can tell a lot about a person by listening to their playlist on shuffle on their iPod. Yeah. And so I was going to get you to do that for me if you had a phone.
I don't.
I bet it's an eclectic mix.
I still listen to CDs. I don't have a turntable anymore for records.
Really?
I still own some, but
Would you like one?
No.
Really?
Yeah, I had one for a long time, and it gathered dust. People complain about the CD format, but I love it. I think that it's remarkable.
Why?
We had done, by the time CDs came in, we had done, I think, 9 albums, LPs, and cassettes. And I was so tired of the snap, crackle, and pop. And if you had a record you really loved and it skipped because you had played it nearly to death, you had to go buy another one.
Yeah.
And I've done that. But I really enjoy sort of the offbeat. It was a band during the 70s called the Movees. You've never heard of them.
Nope.
But they did one album, and then they did the theme music for a George Segal movie called Fun with Dick and Jane.
Is that Seagal?
No, Segal.
Seagal.
George Segal.
I thought you meant the action fighters.
No.
Okay.
This guy.
That would be weird for you to watch that.
Yeah, he's a Phil Hartman kind of guy. Yeah. Anyway, I like I like offbeat music. I like people that incorporate different types of music into what they do. So I listen to people. I like Ricky Lee Jones. I think Ricky Lee Jones' first album was nigh onto a perfect debut album. I like screwball bands like the original version of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. I like.
I like Macklemore and Ryan Lewis.
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. No, there were, so Macklemore was a sort of a spoken word poet in Seattle. I heard him first on a podcast, and he then partnered with a guy called Ryan Lewis. So there's some magic in partnerships. He was the beat maker,
Oh.
and then they came out with an album called Heist, which is just excellent. Like as like a debut album, it's the connection. It's all I had because I don't know the people you're talking about. But the Heist album, if ever you get the chance, you should watch. You should listen to Macklemore Heist.
Okay. I'll listen to it. I'll go home and listen.
I have it on my iPod right
I do
here.
listen to YouTube,
Yes.
and I find people, and then YouTube has some sort of genome in it that rabbit trails.
Oh, no doubt.
And so I will put a Bruce Coburn clip on, and it will move from Bruce Coburn to Joe Robertson to this one to that to the Waylon Jennings, and it just soars.
What was the last YouTube rabbit hole that you found yourself in? And I say found yourself in because you don't realize you're getting submerged in the rabbit hole until you're about 8 videos in. So what was the last topic that you ran down the rabbit hole with?
I found a young woman who does bluegrass. There's a big trend to taking pop songs and making a bluegrass version of them. It's been going on for a while, but it's really popular now. And her name is AJ Lee.
AJ Lee.
She's from, I think, Tennessee, but I'm not sure.
Doesn't matter.
When you watch YouTube on TV, they don't have that information down there like you do on your computer.
If you go to the settings tab, it does. It can come up and you can see it.
Really?
Yeah.
Glad to know that.
Just click around on the little
I'm
white
not
icons.
real adventurous when it comes to technology.
Should be.
I'm really not.
There's very few things you can break these days. And if you do, it's just like you get
I was a qualified and competent recording engineer for a large section of my life. I worked in Nashville, in Boulder, up in North Louisiana, in Texas. At a certain point, when things went digital, I threw my hands up and walked out the door. And I let David Pratt, who's our co-producer and engineer, handle all of it.
Well, when you've got a guy, it's always good to let a guy do it.
Yeah,
you know, do the
and
thing.
he's good at it. He's not just competent; he's really good at it. So, but the last rabbit hole that I went down, I found this little girl, AJ Lee, and I think her band's called Blue Summit, and she's got a beautiful voice. And I watched them, and then the next one was her singing with the Comatose Brothers. Then there was a Home Free video, I think, and then that bounced back to, I think, a Bruce Coburn, opened by Bruce Coburn, and it ran through a few Canadians, and then it jumped over across to Britain, and then there was some Chad and Jeremy in there, and the Seekers, and it gets really expansive because it does not respect musical eras.
It just jumps
It
around.
just lumps them all in there.
Eventually, it always ends up with Adele
Yeah.
for some reason.
Somehow, and I'm not a big Adele fan. I'm a big Katie Tunstall fan.
I'm not going to judge you for that because I could take Adele or leave her, but my wife is a huge Adele fan. So,
Well,
I can't
so
be
is
too-
mine. But at the same time, I think they're all derivative. The girl that was so popular and died very suddenly, I can't remember her name anymore. To me, all of them sounded like they were imitating Katie Tunstall. She's the girl that she used stomp boxes and things, and she did Black Horse and the Cherry Tree.
Yeah, I remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
That was her thing. Yeah, and she's still around, and
terrible
she toured with, or she was touring Britain with Daryl Hall last time I checked. He's over there, and with Shane Terrio, who's a guitar player from, I think he's from Lafayette or Bow Bridge.
There's a lot of them.
Yeah,
There's a lot of talent out there.
it's amazing.
So, so with all of that musical knowledge and knowing that you'd like to go down rabbit holes and things, if you and Jan were to go to your ideal concert, like if anyone could play anywhere, and then you could be in the audience, what would that lineup look like, and where would it be?
I don't know. It could be anything from the UK Ukulele Orchestra. You're familiar with them, of course.
A little bit.
No Brit should be unaware of the ukulele orchestra. To maybe a Steve Winwood I think he's phenomenally talented.
When we are done here, I'm going to go into my office and I'm going to, as I put this together, I'm going to make note of all these people that you've said. I'm going to create the playlist that should exist on your phone. I'm going to put it on my phone and listen to it.
Jan has a playlist. She has a smartphone,
Yes.
and so when we travel, uh, I play CDs. I bought her Honda Accord because it had a CD player in it.
That's not a reason to buy a car.
It's a great car,
It is. Honda Accords are great cars.
but
It had a CD player in it.
yeah, also bought my little Toyota Camry old because it had a CD player in it. My wife has laughed at me for years, said Dudley buys cars by how many guitars he can put in the trunk safely. And the band traveled for so long, and we would always we leased cars. We had a corporate account, and we leased cars. And I would always have to make sure I'd go down there and check out the automobiles, whether they were acceptable or not. I would see how many we were doing and what trip we were on and how many band members were there. And
So, how many musical instruments can you fit in a Honda Accord?
well, it's not how many anymore. I can get my two guitars, Bob's bass, Jan's guitar, her accordion, and all of our luggage in there
Wow, that's impressive.
easily, and still give Jan the entire back seat.
No,
Yeah.
you have to put that back seat to get those guitars in.
No,
Really?
no. Now, I have to remember, I drove Volvos, the old square Volvo 240 series, and I had a Volvo wagon for most of that time. So from the mid 70s, early 70s until fairly recently when the tree fell on my Volvo wagon. Yeah, it was
a bad
horrible.
day.
It was horrible. It burst into flames afterwards, twice.
Did you cry?
Yeah, pretty much. But I was surprised. I couldn't get another Volvo. I couldn't afford the newer ones,
Oh yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
and I really didn't care for them quite as much. It's like people that drive old Land Rover Defenders. Once they've had a Land Rover Defender, they may never buy another car. Especially people in the Highlands because they go everywhere, over everything.
Yeah, I was a rabbit hole I went down a couple of weeks ago on YouTube. I like car show things, and they did that. They did like what's that Elon Musk Cybertruck thing? They put a Cybertruck thing up against a Land Rover, and yeah, let's put it this way: in the Land Rover kicked its ass.
Yeah, of course.
The only way it could compete the Cybertruck is with speed.
I look
They
at the
get up that hill, you
the
know.
Cybertruck. To me, is an ugly version of the DeLorean.
I hadn't made that comparison. People usually refer to it as looking like a trash can.
It does. Well, there's
Some angles it
somebody posted on the internet a picture of I think it's a trash dumpster that's the exact same shape as the Cybertruck.
Well, if you look at it like if you're about 4 foot high and you look at it from behind, it does kind of look like a dump truck. But from the side, it kind of looks like a futuristic, like DeLorean type. If DeLorean was a truck, it would look like that.
But when you talk about instruments, um, we've used, I just read an article about Mark Savoy, who is the Cajun accordion maker. He's the czar of it. He's over right outside of Eunice. And he's been doing this since the mid 60s. And I think that it's a good thing to say, and I think it's okay to say that he has been a big, big part of the renaissance of Cajun music. But he was talking about, if you believe in something, once you find something, you stick with it. And we've used the same guitars, not only the same brand, but the same guitars on all of our albums. Bobby has the same bass. Well, his original bass was stolen, and he got the one he has now to replace it.
Do you string your own or do you have a guy?
Oh no, we do all our own
restring your
work.
own?
Yeah, in fact, we kind of laugh when the people are on stage and they run out and put their guitars, give them a new guitar and whatever. Oh, it's a little out of tune. They give them a new guitar. They don't have time to get out of tune. We don't do that. We tune on stage, and I use an alternate tuning. You and I talked about this before, but I use an open tuning that Richie Havens his music introduced me to, and I've lost the ability to play in standard tuning.
Could you do me a favor? So my Abigail, she's 7 years old. She's one of my twins.
Yeah.
You know my girls, right? So she is her creative spirit is just exploding in like a promising way, and who knows what the future holds. But we have a piano at home, and we bought her an electric guitar. It was on Facebook.
Did she take the ukulele, Jansen?
So Victoria is the ukulele person.
Oh, okay.
Abigail is the guitar.
Oh, okay.
And then she went to electric guitar, and now she's on the piano, and she's still at that dabbling phase, but she's really into it. Could I be cheeky enough to ask you to come over at some point, or we'll bring her to you and just sit and play guitar for a bit?
Absolutely.
She'll love that. She'll love that.
Yeah.
All right, cool. And that's what we'll do.
I'll get Jan to bring her guitar too.
Yeah.
I will say when we retired, Jan was already retired, but when I retired, my gift to myself, but it was really a gift from Jan to me, was
I know how that works.
a traveler guitar, which is a little, very small. I play Guild guitars. It's a small Guild guitar that sounds, even in that diminished form, like a Guild. And so I got it in, I played it, I sat there playing it. I hadn't had it more than 30 minutes. And Jan said, "Oh, I want one too." So I called my guy and I said, "Send me another one."
Yeah, I know how that works. You know, I got a new gift for my birthday the other day. It was a hand-me-down phone because my wife wanted a new phone. That's how that all stuff.
Yes.
All right, tell us about the new album. Where can we get it? You said it's coming out soon?
It should be out next week,
Okay.
the first week of June.
This is Memorial Day 2025. So whenever you're watching this, where do you go to get your music?
That's really interesting.
Not
Because,
on a smartphone.
yeah, of course, there are no brick and mortar stores anymore.
Sure.
They have to order it online, or they'll have to go to Bunkie, Louisiana.
Can I so I've got iTunes here, right? If I put in Smithfield Fair, okay. So I'm gonna go Apple Music, Smithfield Fair. Oh, yeah, 20 for 20. Look at you. So my question, because I don't really know how any of this works, is if I play a piece of music here on iTunes, how do you get paid for that?
They download it these days. In fact, we used to order CDs, same with albums, LPs, by the thousands.
Yep.
Lots of thousand. And the
Lots
first,
of thousand. Is that a number?
yeah, in lots of thousands.
Okay.
But when the first 1,000 came in, immediately, and this is during our heyday, 500 of them were stuffed in mailers and sent back out the door to radio stations around the world and to, there we are.
Sounds cool. Plenty of time.
That's the long,
Yeah.
no, that version is from 20 for 20.
I'm not going to test you. I just really like this song.
Yeah, me
I
too.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Right, do you smile when you hear every one of your songs on?
Yeah.
You do?
We went to a restaurant up in Alexandria, Tunks on the river, and it looks out over the lake. And I walked in and took in that beautiful view of whatever lake that is. I can't remember. And I went, "That's us." And the television was on, and the Sugarcane League had a commercial on the air, and Our Sweet Sugarcane was the background music
yeah, I
for
know that
it.
song too.
A friend of mine, Dan Wilgan, came down from Denver, and he went to a Jazz Narrative Festival. And he stayed a couple of other days to visit with some friends, and they went to Oak Alley. And he walked in Oak Alley, and he's walking around, and he goes, "That's Smithfield Fair." And in a room, there's a diorama of the sugarcane industry, and blaring over the speakers is Sweet Sugarcane. Yeah, I still get goosebumps when I hear things. I just completely, I mean, it's not like I sit in the car and put my own CD in there. I'm talking about driving down the road or in a store or something and hearing it just, abstract like that.
That's amazing.
It's still, it's a very interesting thing to happen. I remember the very first time I heard our very first single on the car radio driving down the road. I had to stop. I mean, I got so excited. We were in Lazione's po' boy shop up in Alexandria, and they had those little things on the table,
Yeah.
the little jukebox triggers on the table. And I was on the table, and I said, "Oh, look, they've got a jukebox on here." And my drummer reached over and went, "Ch-ch." And our first single came up on the radio, on the speakers. And I went, "Wow." Well, I should have known. I mean, the distribution deal went out, but yeah, it's still exciting to hear it. And it's not so much of a smug pride thing as it is an excitement that your music is getting out to where other people can hear it.
Well,
I'm very thankful for that.
ever since I've listened to your music, I mean, it's unique, and it always makes me smile to hear some beautiful music. I appreciate all the work that went into all of that stuff, and it does make me smile too. I'm glad to know that on the occasion when you do get to unexpectedly revisit or bump into one of your songs, that it makes you smile too. I think you're a wonderful person, and I'm going to let you go now.
Thank you.
You're the man. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Stuart.